They say nothing makes an HOA Karen lose her mind faster than watching someone break her imaginary rules. That's the thing about living in a so-called prestigious community with manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and a rulebook thicker than a Bible. There's always one person who thinks they're the sheriff of the suburbs. In my neighborhood, that person was Karen. Everyone knew her. Everyone feared her too, not because she had any real authority, but because she wielded her clipboard and HOA bylaws like weapons. She'd fine you if your grass grew an inch too tall, lecture you if your trash can was on the curb 10 minutes past pickup, and file complaints if she thought your curtains weren't aesthetically consistent. Most people avoided her, tried to stay invisible. Me? I didn't care. The trouble started the day I brought my new car home. Not just any car. A brand new Rolls Royce Phantom, gleaming silver with black-tinted windows and chrome rims that caught the sunlight like diamonds. It was the kind of car that turned heads even in wealthy neighborhoods. When I pulled up to the gated entrance, the security guard's jaw dropped as he waved me through. My tires glided over the smooth asphalt and I could feel the hum of power beneath me. This car wasn't just transportation. It was a statement. And apparently it was the exact kind of statement Karen couldn't stand. I saw her almost immediately. She lived 2 houses down from mine, and she was outside, clipping her rose bushes like she was auditioning for a gardening competition. The second she heard the low purr of my engine, her head snapped up. Her pruning shears froze midair. Her eyes locked on the rolls, narrowing like she had just spotted a burglar breaking into her home. For a second I thought she might ignore it, maybe chalk it up to a visitor. But no, this was Karen. She dropped the shears, straightened her spine, and marched to the edge of her driveway. Her entire posture screamed, "How dare you!" I slowed down just enough to catch her expression in my side mirror. Her lips were pressed into a thin, angry line. Her arms folded across her chest. She tapped one foot against the concrete with the impatience of someone seconds away from exploding. I parked in my driveway, stepped out casually, and admired the way the sunlight reflected off the car's polished hood. I didn't even have to look at her to know she was coming. I could hear the quick, sharp click of her sandals against the pavement, each step fueled by indignation. "Excuse me." Her voice carried across the cul-de-sac like a siren. "What is that doing here?" I turned slowly, as if I had all the time in the world. Karen stood at the edge of my property line, her hands on her hips now, eyes blazing. She was in her mid-50s with the kind of blonde bob haircut that screamed, HOA president, and she wore a pastel cardigan draped over her shoulders even though the afternoon sun was sweltering. "What's what doing here?" I asked, though I knew exactly where this was going. "That late thing." She jabbed her finger at the Rolls Royce like it was a crime scene. "That car. You can't just bring something like that into this neighborhood. This is a family community, not a car dealership." I raised an eyebrow, fighting back a laugh. "It's my car, Karen. I live here. Remember?" She scoffed. "Barely. You've been here, what, 6 months? I don't think you understand how we do things here. We have rules, strict rules about the kinds of vehicles allowed in driveways. That monstrosity is not one of them." I glanced back at the Phantom, its sleek body shining in the sunlight. "Looks like it fits just fine to me." Her face flushed crimson. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, because of course Karen carried HOA documents around like a gunslinger with a holster. She shook it at me. "Page 47, Section B? No commercial vehicles, no eyesores, no disruptive displays of wealth." I chuckled. "Disruptive displays of wealth? That's not a law, Karen. That's just jealousy dressed up in legalese." Her jaw dropped. She gasped like I had slapped her. "Jealousy? Oh, please. You think anyone around here cares about your little toy? We've worked hard to maintain the image of this neighborhood, and we won't have it ruined by someone showing off like they're a celebrity." By now, a few of the neighbors had peeked through their curtains. Some stood at their windows, pretending not to watch but clearly riveted. One guy across the street, Mr. Jenkins, was sipping his iced tea on the porch with a grin, enjoying the free entertainment. I leaned against the car door, folding my arms. "Karen, with all due respect, my car isn't breaking any laws. It's registered, insured, and parked in my own driveway. If you've got a problem with it, that's your problem." Her nostrils flared. "You think you can just waltz in here with your gangster car and flaunt it in front of our children? What message does that send?" I laughed outright this time. "Gangster car? Karen, it's a Rolls Royce. CEOs drive these. Presidents. Not exactly the wheels of the mafia." She stomped a foot like a child. It's ostentatious. It's vulgar. And it's... She lowered her voice as though uttering a curse. Against the spirit of this community. That word, spirit, was Karen's favorite. She used it whenever the rule book didn't cover something she wanted to control. The spirit of the neighborhood meant whatever Karen personally approved of. I tilted my head. Funny, I thought the spirit of this community was freedom. Home ownership, living the dream. My dream just happens to come with a Rolls Royce. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Her face twisted into something halfway between fury and disbelief, like she couldn't fathom the audacity of someone actually talking back to her. Then she pulled out her phone. Fine, if you won't listen, maybe the board will. And the police while we're at it, I grinned. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. Just make sure you get my good side when you're taking pictures. She gasped again, fingers fumbling as she snapped photo after photo of the rolls from every angle, muttering about evidence. Her hands shook with rage, and her voice rose louder, ensuring the entire neighborhood could hear. This is not over. This is absolutely not over. You don't belong here with that car, and I will see to it you're removed. I shook my head, watching her stomp back toward her house, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Neighbors quickly vanished from their windows, pretending they hadn't just witnessed the showdown. But I knew tomorrow the whispers would spread like wildfire. Karen had found her new enemy, and she wasn't going to let go. As I turned back to admire the rolls again, I couldn't help but smile. She thought she was making my life miserable. What she didn't realize was that this was just the beginning. Karen didn't waste any time. She stood in her driveway, phone pressed tight to her ear, her voice rising high enough that even the people 2 streets over probably heard her shrieking. I leaned against the hood of my Rolls Royce, arms crossed, a half smirk tugging at my lips. I knew what she was doing, reporting me like I was some hardened criminal, but I wanted to see just how far she'd take it. Yes, hello, officer, she said, pacing like a general preparing for battle. Yes, there's a suspicious man in a suspicious vehicle on Magnolia Lane. Very suspicious. He's parked right in front of me. I don't feel safe. She turned sharply, glaring at me like she hoped her eyes could bore holes through my skull. Yes, it's one of those drug dealer cars. Black windows, flashy rims, loud engine. You should hurry, it's scaring the children. I raised a brow. Scaring the children? Karen, the only thing scaring the children is your voice. She covered the receiver, whisper yelling at me. You'll see. They'll deal with you. People like you don't belong here. I spread my arms wide, gesturing toward the quiet cul-de-sac. The neatly trimmed hedges, the rows of mailboxes standing like soldiers in formation. People like me? You mean homeowners who pay their dues on time, or people who buy cars nicer than yours? Her face turned crimson, the kind of shade usually reserved for cartoons. She spun back to her call. Yes, officer, please come quickly. He's taunting me right now. Absolutely aggressive behavior. And I think he's dangerous. That part stung, not because I cared what she thought, but because I could already imagine how the police might interpret her tone. Karen had the type of voice that painted villains out of thin air. And she wasn't just complaining. She was building a narrative, one she wanted the officers to swallow whole before they even arrived. By now the neighbors were no longer hiding. The Johnsons across the street were standing on their porch, whispering behind their hands. Old man Jenkins was still on his rocking chair, sipping his sweet tea like this was pay-per-view entertainment. Kids peeked from behind curtains, their wide eyes bouncing between the gleaming Rolls Royce and Karen's dramatic performance. The whole block was alive with curiosity. Karen finally hung up and crossed her arms in triumph. They're on their way, and when they get here, they'll drag you out of this neighborhood in handcuffs. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. Karen, you've officially lost it. It's a car, not a crime scene. Do you even hear yourself? She sneered. Oh, I hear myself just fine. You think you're untouchable, don't you? Parading around in your expensive toys, thinking the rules don't apply to you. Well, newsflash, you're not above the law. I tilted my head, studying her like she was some rare bird squawking nonsense. Newsflash, you're not the law. Last I checked, HOA presidents don't get badges. The sound of sirens interrupted our exchange. Distant at first, then louder, closer, until the red and blue glow washed over the houses like fireworks. Karen's eyes lit up as if Christmas had come early. She actually clapped her hands once, like a child about to unwrap a gift. Finally, she whispered, almost giddy. Justice. A patrol car rolled to a stop at the curb, its lights spinning, the engine rumbling. Two officers stepped out, both with the kind of measured caution that comes from years on the job. They didn't rush. They didn't bark orders. But their eyes were sharp, scanning the car, scanning me, then landing on Karen, who immediately waved her arms like she was signaling an airplane. "Officers, over here," she called, nearly tripping over her own feet as she hurried toward them. "That's him. That's the man. Right there by the car." The taller officer, a dark-haired man with a square jaw, raised a hand to calm her. "Ma'am, slow down. What exactly seems to be the problem here?" Karen pointed dramatically at me, then at the Rolls Royce. "The problem? That him!" "This criminal brought that monstrosity into our neighborhood. It's clearly suspicious. I don't feel safe." "None of us do." She gestured wildly at the neighbors, most of whom quickly looked away, unwilling to get dragged into her crusade. The second officer, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense tone, turned toward me. "Sir, mind telling us what's going on?" I pushed off the hood of the Rolls, standing tall, calm. "Not much to tell, officers." I drove my car into my own driveway. "Karen here doesn't like it. Decided to call you instead of minding her own business." Karen gasped. "Minding my own business? This is everyone's business. This is a safe community. We can't have outsiders bringing their gang cars here." The male officer frowned. "Ma'am, do you have any reason to believe this man is a threat?" "Yes," she cried. "Look at that car. Who drives a Rolls Royce except criminals, drug dealers, and rappers?" That drew a laugh out of me before I could stop it. "Rappers, Karen, really?" The female officer held up a hand. "All right, let's keep it civil. Sir, do you live here?" "Sure do," I said, pulling out my wallet. I handed over my driver's license and proof of address. "Been here 6 months, paid up on all my dues. House deed's in my name. Want me to grab it from inside?" The officer studied the ID, then looked at me, then at the car. Something flickered across his face. Not suspicion, but recognition. He stepped aside, murmured something into his radio. Karen noticed and leaned closer. "See, they're checking him. I told you he doesn't belong here. Probably some con artist pretending to be rich." "Karen," I said, shaking my head slowly, "the only pretending happening here is you pretending to be a cop." The male officer returned, his expression more serious now. He handed my ID back, but his hand lingered. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stay put for a moment." Karen's eyes sparkled like diamonds. "Oh, this is it. I knew it. I knew something was wrong with him." The female officer moved closer to me. Her voice was calm but firm. "Sir, would you mind if we ask you a few more questions?" "Not at all," I replied. My heart was steady, but inside I could feel the weight of the moment. Karen had wanted drama, and she was about to get it. "Do you have any prior history with law enforcement?" she asked. I smirked. "Depends on what you mean by history. Parking tickets, sure. Nothing worth your time." The male officer's radio crackled again. He listened, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then he approached, posture stiff. "Sir, you're going to need to come with us." Karen gasped so loudly it echoed down the street. She clutched her hands to her chest, spinning toward the neighbors. "See, I told you. I told you all. He's dangerous. I knew it from the second I saw that car." The officer stepped closer. I didn't resist. I simply held out my wrists as the cuffs clicked shut, the cold steel biting into my skin. Neighbors whispered louder now, voices carrying fragments of disbelief, curiosity, and gossip. Kids pressed their faces to the glass, wide-eyed. Karen strutted forward, chin high, her voice dripping with smugness. "Well, officers, I think you should thank me. If it weren't for me, who knows what he would have done to this neighborhood. I saved us all." The female officer gave her a sharp look. "Ma'am, that's enough," but Karen ignored her. She leaned in close, her breath hot with triumph. "Told you, you don't belong here. This community is for decent people, and now you're exactly where you deserve to be, in handcuffs." I turned my head slightly, meeting her eyes. I let a slow smile spread across my face, not of fear, but of something darker, heavier. My voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "Careful what you wish for, Karen. You might have just lit a fire you can't put out." Her smirk faltered for just a second, confusion flashing across her face. But before she could respond, the officers guided me toward the squad car. The crowd parted, whispers swelling. Cameras came out. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in months were suddenly documenting every step, ready to upload the drama to social media. The door shut behind me, the interior of the squad car sealing me off from the chaos outside. Karen stood there, triumphant but trembling. her hands gripping her phone like a weapon she wasn't ready to lower. And though she didn't know it yet, the game had only just begun. The interior of the squad car was quiet except for the steady hum of the engine and the faint crackle of the police radio. The cuffs dug into my wrists as I shifted against the hard plastic seat. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with murmurs and curious stares. Faces pressed against windows. Phones pointed toward me. I caught a glimpse of Karen in the rearview mirror, arms crossed, chest puffed out, eyes gleaming with self-righteous victory. She looked like a queen watching her rival marched off to the gallows. The female officer slid into the driver's seat, while her partner took the passenger side. They didn't speak right away. They just sat there for a moment, radios hissing with static, exchanging a glance that was heavier than words. The taller officer finally turned to face me, his tone calm but edged. "Sir, you know why we're detaining you?" I leaned back, keeping my voice even. "Far as I can tell, because Karen doesn't like my car." His eyes flickered, betraying something he wasn't saying. "That's not why." I studied him carefully. His jaw was tight, his knuckles resting against his thigh in a fist he seemed to be holding back. The female officer started the engine but didn't drive. Instead, she looked at me through the mirror. Her gaze was sharp, searching. "We got a ping when we ran your name," she said flatly. Karen was still in the street outside, arms flailing as she explained the situation to the crowd like a celebrity giving a press conference. I could almost hear her voice, shrill and triumphant. "Yes, I told them everything. Yes, I was right. He doesn't belong here. Can you imagine what could have happened if I hadn't called?" I sighed, shifting in the seat. "A ping? Care to explain?" The male officer opened a small notepad. "There's an active warrant associated with your name. Not from this county, not even this state. Federal level." A ripple of tension ran through me, though I kept my expression steady. Karen had wanted me in trouble, but she had no idea the storm she'd just invited into her picture-perfect suburb. "Federal, huh?" I said quietly. "You sure about that?" The female officer's voice hardened. "We don't joke about warrants. This isn't about your car or your neighbor. This is bigger." My laugh was low, almost bitter. "Figures. All Karen had to do was wave her magic HOA wand and you just happened to stumble into this mess." The male officer frowned. "Mess or not, we have a duty. Until this is clarified, we're bringing you in." I nodded slowly. There was no point fighting here. Not in front of Karen, not in front of the neighbors. The real battle would happen later, somewhere away from prying eyes. The car began to move. As we rolled past the gawking neighbors, whispers followed. I could see kids pointing, adults shaking their heads. Karen stood in the center like she'd orchestrated the entire show. Her smile was wide, but behind it I caught something else. Hesitation. She wanted to be sure she had won, but she didn't understand what game she had entered. As the patrol car turned the corner, her figure grew smaller, until she was just a blot of color in the mirror. That was when I allowed myself to close my eyes. Hours blurred together in interrogation rooms. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, papers shuffled, radios squawked. Officers came and went asking questions, cross-checking databases, confirming details. I sat there, cuffs gone but under watch, calm and collected. They were fishing for answers, but I gave them none. By nightfall, the truth began to leak through the cracks. The warrant wasn't for me, not really, not my actions at least. It was tied to an old name, a ghost of a life I'd left behind years ago, a business deal overseas, a contract that had been smeared by corruption and politics. I wasn't a criminal, but to some people in high places I was convenient to blame. And Karen, in her desperate crusade against a car she didn't like, had given them the excuse to find me. When they finally realized the case was murkier than they thought, they let me sit alone in the room. A camera hummed quietly in the corner. I stared straight into it, knowing someone on the other side was watching. "Karen thinks she won," I said softly, my voice carrying in the silence. "But all she did was shine a spotlight where none of you wanted it. And when the light spreads, we'll see who's really guilty." They released me just after midnight. No charges pressed yet. Just a warning to stay put while matters were sorted. I stepped out into the cool night air, the silence of the empty station wrapping around me. My Rolls Royce was waiting, impounded but spotless, released as quickly as I had been. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cool against my skin, and started the engine. The purr of the car was softer in the night, almost soothing. I drove back toward the neighborhood, headlights cutting through the darkness. By the time I pulled onto Magnolia Lane, most houses were dark, blinds drawn, the perfect suburban quiet restored, except for Karen's house. Her lights were still blazing, curtains wide open like she wanted the world to see her awake. She stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring into the street. The moment my Rolls Royce appeared, her body stiffened. Her mouth opened slightly. Shock rippled across her face. I parked slowly in my driveway, letting the engine idle for a moment before turning it off. Then I stepped out, closing the door with a soft click. The night air was cool, the silence heavy. Karen's silhouette was frozen at her window. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I simply looked up, met her eyes across the distance, and let a slow smile curve my lips. She backed away from the window, curtains snapping shut a second later. And there it was. For all her noise, for all her righteous fury, she finally understood. She hadn't won. She'd drawn blood in a game she didn't understand. And now the pieces were moving. The neighborhood would whisper about the night the Rolls Royce owner was taken away in handcuffs. They'd gossip about Karen's role, about the police cars, about the mysterious arrest. But beneath it all, something deeper had shifted. Karen had wanted to humiliate me, to drive me out, to flex her power. Instead, she had given me the upper hand. Because now every time she looked at me, or at the Rolls gleaming in my driveway, she would remember that smile. The smile that told her she hadn't destroyed me. The smile that promised this wasn't over. And as I walked back into my house, the silence of the night following me like a shadow, I knew one thing for certain. Karen had no idea what storm she had just unleashed.